Hey there, welcome back to another Thoughts on video, and the topic for this video is going to be another band. And the band that I'm going to be discussing in this video is actually one of my favorites, and it is The Offspring. Now, before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to Steven for requesting this video. Initially, though, he only was asking for reviews of three of their albums, but I love this band enough that I decided I was going to go above and beyond here and just talk about their entire discography as well as the band in general. Because, in all honesty, when it comes to bands like this, I really want to just be as extensive and as in depth as I can be, because I, I I I genuinely like them that much, and I really enjoy talking about their work. If there is another video like this, or review, or anything of that sort that you might be curious to see me cover in the future, uh, go ahead and check out the video description down below. I got all the information down there when it comes to paid requests, and the rules and everything, and how much I'm asking for, and so on. But the band The Offspring started out in 1984, and they actually originally had the title of Manic Subsidal. And it's actually, in my opinion, a really bad name for a band, and I'm glad that they decided that that wasn't going to work, and they wisely retitled the band to The Offspring. Uh, and the band initially consisted of Dexter Holland, the lead vocalist and guitarist, Noodles, who was the lead guitarist, and a drummer named James Leah, and the bassist Greg K. And the drummer was eventually replaced in, I believe, like 1987, like 3 years after the band's creation, with drummer Ron Welty, who would go on to become the longest tenured drummer for the band. Over the years, the band has gone through some changes. For instance, Greg K is no longer a part of the band. Neither is Ron Welty. Ron was replaced by Adam Willard at one point, and then Adam was replaced by Pete Parada, and then Pete Parada was ultimately replaced by their current drummer, Brandon Pertzborn. And the bassist, Greg K, was replaced by Todd Morse, and the band also added a different instrumentalist guy who could do a bunch of different things, named Jonah Nimoy. And really, The Offspring it's basically zombie Offspring at this point, because you only have Dexter Holland, who's the lead vocalist, and Kevin Noodles Wasserman, who is the guitarist, who are the remaining members of the original band. And this is a band that, for me personally, actually had their best album later on in their discography, not at the start of it, which is fairly common, actually. If you look at the discography of a lot of bands, they don't always start off with a banger. Kind of takes them a little bit to get into their groove, so to speak, and find their style and their signature sound. And The Offspring is definitely one of those bands, because their first album, the self-titled album, The Offspring, which came out in 1989, that is definitely an example of a band who is just wanting to put something on an album for the first time. It's a band that has a handful of songs that they have been maybe touring with for a little bit at festivals and other local hangouts. and then they got noticed by a record label. In this case, it was Nemesis Records, and then ultimately Epitaph, who would pick them up for their second album, Ignition, as well as their third and Smash, which was the album that really catapulted them into the charts and into the hearts of a lot of fans of the band. And this debut album, it's honestly my least favorite album of theirs. I'm not really a big fan of this album. And I think the big part of it is it's a lot of just straight up punk. And for some people, that's why they think this is a gem and they really like this album. But for me, this is not what I personally like the most out of the Offspring. I like it when they mix pop and punk together in a way that is, uh, let's just say, a little more catchy when it comes to the chorus or the verses or the instrumentals or just the overall structure of the song. And I like when the Offspring play around with tone and create songs that are heavy sounding, but also have a little bit of tongue in cheek humor to them. That is honestly my favorite type of Offspring song for the most part. There are some exceptions, but when they are grittier, when they're darker, when they're edgier, like in this album, it's not really my cup of tea. This album consists of 11 tracks. Uh, Tracks 1 through 11, for the most part, are just really of the same quality to me. With some exceptions, I do think Jennifer Lost the War is not too bad. I think it's absolutely one of the better songs on the album, but it's not really one of my favorites of theirs. Another one that I don't mind is Blackball, uh, which is a song that the guy who said keep them separated and come out and play and smash, that was a song that that guy was a huge fan of, and he always requested the band to play. Uh, and he would be super obnoxious about it, which I think, honestly, I don't think it's that good of a song to be that obsessed with it, but it's not a bad song by any means. But it's not great either. I mean, just a lot of these tracks just bleed together and just sound very similar to one another. This is definitely an instance of a band trying to find their footing, trying to find their way. A lot of throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, kind of stuff, and I don't really think it sticks very strongly. And honestly, this is a very generic sounding album. Like, it really sounds like a slew of other punk bands at the time. And there's really not a lot that makes it stand out from their other peers from the same time period. Like, if the band continued down this trajectory, I don't think they would have lasted very long. And I definitely don't think that they really would have wound up hitting the charts and having anywhere near as much success. Their second album was in 1992, and it's called Ignition. And Ignition is a step up from their debut album, but it's still not one of my favorite albums of theirs. I know a lot of people love Ignition. In fact, a lot of Offspring fans, they tend to rank Offspring albums, like the top three Offspring albums, as Smash is number one, Ignition is number two, and then maybe Americana, or maybe their debut album or something. Maybe Conspiracy of One they might throw in there. Or Ixnay on the Hombre, that's the other one. A lot of the time, Ixnay on the Hombre is number three. This album's number two or number one. Smash is number one or number two, and I get it, I understand. But I didn't grow up with Ignition like I think a lot of other Offspring fans did, so I don't really have the same connection with it. And this is definitely what I would consider to be more closer to proto Offspring as you know and love them. Like, this is definitely them really starting to pinpoint a sound and a style that is all their own. And as a result, there are some moments where it's a little rough around the edges. And I think that, that's something that holds this album back a little bit. I think the mixing is kind of average to me, but this is still an album where you can see potential. Like, you can see the potential for something great, uh, and you see that with tracks like "Dirty Magic," which I honestly like. It's not one of my favorite tracks of theirs, but I still do like the track. Or "Kick Him When He's Down." But really, for me, the the best song in this album is the last track for me, "Forever and a Day." I love that song. That is the first Offspring song that I can say that I actually love. I love the guitar work on it. I love the percussion. I love Dexter's vocals on it. I even like the lyrics. I just love the fast, intense pace of it. And I also love the fact that it was used very well in a Charlie Sheen film called The Chase during an action sequence. So this to me is closer to what I'm looking for from this band, but not to the point yet where I can say that it's full of tracks that I would, personally listen to again and again. And if anybody's wondering why I'm not going track by track with these particular albums, it's because these weren't the albums that were requested for me to review. So I figured I might as well just talk about the tracks that I like the most, or if there are any tracks that I particularly dislike when it comes to these albums, and then just leave it at that, and just, mention whether or not I like the album as a whole, and then save the time for more in-depth discussions on the albums that I was actually asked to talk about in more detail. And the first album that I was asked to discuss in detail is Smash from 1994, their third album. And this was a smash hit, no pun intended. This album actually set records at the time for independent labeled bands in terms of album sales. Because prior to Smash, Epitaph hadn't really had that much success, and you really didn't have a indie label put out an album that was this commercially successful. Smash wound up becoming the Offspring's most financially successful and popular album of their entire discography, because it wound up selling 11 million copies. And at the time, that was a massive deal for a band like The Offspring and for a label like Epitaph. And in a lot of ways, it still is, because if you really look at how big this album was, it was an album that was such a smash hit that it made the band a household name practically overnight. And this is not my favorite album of theirs. I know it is for a lot of Offspring fans, but this is definitely in my top five. This is a really strong, solid album. Like, this is the first album from the band where I was like, okay, this is good, if not great at points. The first track is just an intro called Time to Relax, and it's this narrator who's got a very soothing voice, by the way, who they use honestly more than once throughout their discography. He's kind of a repeated gag for the band, but it fits and it adds an extra bit of personality and charm to the album. And track 2 is like the first actual song. It's called Nitro, Youth Energy. And I think this is a really great opening track. It's a really uh, impactful, really amazing opening salvo for this album. I love the energy of this track. I honestly really like the lyrics. I like the chorus. I like the verse. I like the hook. I like the guitar work by Noodles as well as Greg K. When it comes to the bass, the drums are there. To be honest, I think the original drummer, he's not a bad drummer by any means, Ron, but he definitely had, let's just say, a little bit more rough points, a little bit more moments with his drumming that's not as polished or as skilled as some other drummers. So because of that, it adds a little bit to his drumming, but it also kind of takes away in some ways from the overall potential that the band could reach. But he's definitely not, in my opinion, a detriment or something that's holding the band back too much. Because I still think, he does overall a good job. But honestly, unpopular opinion, but I think when Pete Parada joined the band, I think he actually delivered the best drumming that the band had honestly ever had. But it's still got there's still some good drumming here, and you definitely hear it in Nitro, and Dexter's vocals are unique. He's not the best singer, but he makes up for it with his own attitude that he tends to bring to his vocals. And this was early enough in his career where he could still pull off the higher notes and the more uh, let's just say wild vocal style. But yeah, Nitro is one of my favorite tracks from this album. I actually think it's a fairly underrated song in general by the band. Track 3 is Bad Habit. This is one of their more popular songs from this album. I've never really been the biggest fan of this song. I appreciate the concept of it, and I think the bass solo at the beginning is fantastic. But it's just a hard and abrasive song to listen to, and I know that's the point because it's supposed to really feel like you're stuck in traffic in Los Angeles and you're dealing with two different types of people and how they handle a situation like that. And I think the song does a good job at making you feel that way, but it's not something that I want to feel that often. So I think that's really, honestly, one of the main problems I have with this track is it's effective in what it's trying to do, but it's not something that I really like to listen to a lot because of how abrasive it is. Uh, Track 4, though, I felt was an improvement, and Gotta Get Away. I actually really like that track. I think the chorus is fantastic. I think the verses are good too. I think it's overall easily one of the best tracks on the album. Track 5 is Genocide is another good one. The lyrics are definitely a little political and definitely have some social commentary in there, but it doesn't come across that preachy to me. And I think it has some good guitar work in it in particular. Track 6 is Something to Believe in. It's another one that I like. I wouldn't say that I love it, but I do like the track, and I think it's another track on this album that's pretty strong overall when it comes to all the different elements. Track 7 is Come Out and Play. This is easily one of their biggest hits from the album, and yeah, I really like this song. This is one of my favorite songs from the band. I like the energy of it. I like the flow. I like how it incorporates the quote, you gotta keep them separated. I like how it uses the sitar. Like, I think it's a really unique, fun song. Uh, and easily one of the biggest highlights of the album, and honestly from the band in general, because this track was one of their most popular tracks from this album, and it really helped put them on the map. And the band definitely was chasing the success of Come Out to Play with a lot of the albums that came out afterwards. You could really tell that they were trying to chase the success of it. And it worked one time with The Pretty Fly for a White Guy, but the other times that they tried to chase the same success, it really didn't work out too well. Track 8 is Self Esteem. It's another track that I think is honestly spectacular. Another track that's one of my favorites of theirs. I love the Nirvana nod at the beginning with the na 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 na. I like that, and I love how that transitions into the opening guitar solo, and just the really rockin' vocals. Like I definitely think that Dexter really did a great job with his vocals on this particular track, and I like the lyrics. I like the overall structure of the song with the verses and the chorus and the hook. And yeah, this is, in my opinion, honestly my favorite song from the album. And it was kind of a basic take, but it really is. Track 9 is called It'll Be a Long Time. That's another one that's kind of along the same lines as something to believe in. It's fine, but it's not anything phenomenal. Killboy Powerhead is track 10. It's a cover of a song of the same name by a band called The Digits. I think they do a way better job than the original band did, but it's still a song that's just kind of almost really a little bit of a filler track. It's not bad, but it's just kind of there. And I feel the same way about What Happened to You, track 11. This is definitely really getting into a lot of the kind of songs that the Offspring would start doing more of after this album, with songs like Walla Walla and so on and so forth, where it's very tongue-in-cheek and it's okay. It's easy to listen to, but it's not particularly one of my favorites from this album. It's a lot better than track 12, So Alone, which I really don't like. In fact, I think So Alone is easily the worst track on this album. It's the epitome of a filler track. It's only like a minute and 17 seconds, and it honestly comes across like it's an unfinished demo track that they just threw on there. Track 13 is called Not the One. That's another one that's just fine, decent for what it is, but not anything amazing. Another one I could listen to, but not one that I would honestly single out as one of the best tracks on the album. Track 14, I think, is an improvement in Smash. I actually do like that track quite a bit, especially the chorus. It's very catchy. And I think it just really matches and meshes with the overall attitude and the spirit of the band very well. I'm not a trendy asshole, do what I want, do what I feel like. I'm not a trendy asshole, do what I want. I don't care if it's good enough for you. Like yeah, it's a great chorus. So yeah, I genuinely think this is a good album. I can see why some fans say it's their favorite. I understand that. But for me, it will always be Americana. But I still really liked this album for the most part. There was only one song I didn't like at all, and it was So Alone. And there were at least a couple tracks on this album that were actually really some of my favorites that the band has ever done. And then the rest were at least listenable. So yeah, I definitely think that this is a good album for sure. Their next album is Ixnay on the Ombre. And that was their first album with a major label. They signed with Columbia Records. And this one came out in 1997. And this is one that grows on me. It's kind of similar to Conspiracy of One in that regard, where initially when I heard this album, I wasn't super big on it. But the more that I hear it, the more that I like it. And it does have some songs on here that I would actually put on my best of list when it comes to Offspring songs. Uh, the Meaning of Life, I think, is a magnificent track. I think it's a great song. And I would probably say, along with Gone Away uh, or All I Want, as one of the better, or honestly, not just one of the better, one of the best tracks on the album. But I also really like Moda, which is track 3. I think it's a very unique sounding track. I really like the mix of guitar and percussion and instrumental stuff and voiceover quirks. Like I really like that track. Um, but there's a lot of tracks on here that are just kind of there for me, or I'm not super big on. Like, I don't really like Cool to Hate, even though it's got a catchy hook. I'm not really a big fan of the song. Leave It Behind is just very. It just feels like a demo track again, and it's not even 2 minutes. Uh, Gone Away is great. All I Want, I like. It is a short track, but I actually really like that track because I think the chorus in particular is really strong. Way Down the Line is all right. Don't Pick It Up's okay. Amazed is not too bad. It's definitely one of the better tracks on the album as well. Change the World is, in my opinion, kind of a weak uh, end track. It's a weak finale for the album. This is a better album than any of the Offspring's like last 3 albums by far, but it's not in the top 3 for me personally. But it is an album that I would admit that does still have some songs that are really good and are definite bangers, like The Meaning of Life and Moda and Gone Away. Uh, the next album after Ixnay on the Ombre is Americana, and this was their second most popular album financially. Um, but I think it might be like the most popular album critically, or at least it reached the same accolades as Smash for the most part, because this album was huge, and this is the album that really introduced me to the band. So due to some nostalgia, that definitely is a reason why I love this album. But it's not just that. This is the strongest album for me overall because there's only one track on the album that I just kind of think is all right. Well, actually, there's a couple tracks that I feel that way. But there's nothing on the album though that I don't like at all. They all tracks on this album have something that I appreciate or I really enjoy. I like the opening to the album where with the same narrator from Smash who's welcoming you to the album, and then it transitions into track 2, Have You Ever, which is honestly one of my favorite songs from the band. In general, I love this track. I think it's got a killer hook. I think the chorus is fantastic. The verses are really good. I love the lyrics. I just love the overall pace and the overall flow of this track. And I think Dexter's vocals really work very well here. And it it's just a really great opener to the album. And then I love how it transitions into Staring at the Sun. I think it actually transitions into the second track. I mean, the third track of the album in a very clever and unique way. And I also like Staring at the Sun. I wouldn't say that it's on the same level as Have You Ever or some of the other tracks on the album, but it's still a good track. And then you get to Pretty Fly for a White Guy, and it takes some of the elements that come out and play and then puts a different spin on it and actually creates another iconic song by the band. Uh, it's not one of my personal favorites from the band, though. It is one of my favorite songs from this album, but there are other tracks that I just like more. Come Out and Play, it was inspired and it was unique and it was one of a kind and it was the first of its kind. And Pretty Fly for a White Guy, it's following that up and it's still strong and it's still iconic in its own way. I mean, the hook of this is easily one of their most catchy hooks they've ever done. But it's a song that is a little overplayed, I have to be honest, when it comes to the band. Um, but it's still a good track. But it doesn't hold a candle to track 5, which is my favorite track by the band, uh, and easily my favorite track from this album. The Kids Aren't All Right. The Kids Aren't All Right is astounding. It's a really awesome song. It's got a great overall flow and pace to it. It has one of their best guitar riffs in terms of like an opener to the track, as well as just in general. I think Noodles' work here and Greg K's work is just exceptional. And the lyrics are tremendous, top notch. The verses, the chorus, everything about this song slaps. So, and this song is honestly a song that it it honestly speaks even more to me personally as I've gotten older. And I know I'm not the only one. Like, there's a lot of people who, when they heard this song when they were younger, yeah, it's a good song. It's a banger. You like listening to it, but you don't necessarily have it resonate the same as it does when you're all grown up and you're an adult. And if you ask me, this is the real anthem for anybody that's not in the 1% in the United States, because this is the reality. Chances blown, nothing's free. You know, so yeah, it's a great song. Track 6 is definitely a step down from track 5, from The Kids Aren't All Right in feelings, but it's one that I've honestly warmed up to over the years because I really like the guitar work in it. And I do think that Dexter's snarky vocals actually do add a lot to it. And the original song is not something that I particularly like to listen to that much. But I felt that this was a decent cover of it. And the band found a way to make it their own. And it's actually really one of the more unique covers that I've heard from honestly anyone, because they just did something, made it punk somehow. And it's kind of wild and definitely crazy when you hear the original song. Track 7 is She's Got Issues, and there's another one I like. It's one of those more comedic tracks on the album, and I actually think it's rather clever at points, rather funny, and for anybody who has dealt with a deadbeat girlfriend, or if you're on the opposite side, a deadbeat boyfriend, is definitely a song that I think a lot of people can connect with. It's not one of my favorites of theirs overall as a band, but it is one of the better tracks on the album. Track 8, though, I love. Walla Walla. I love everything about this song. This is, in my opinion, easily one of their more underrated tracks in general, not just from this album. I love this song so much. I love the opening, which sounds like somebody's just doing an exercise video. And one, and two, and one, and two, and one, and two. And then I love the guitar work in it. I love the bass. I love Dexter's vocals. I especially love the lyrics, and I love the relentless pace of this particular track. Um, and the chorus is one of their best, one of their finest. Uh, Track 9, not on the same level, but still pretty good in the end of the line. I do like that track as well. No Breaks is kind of a similar song in some ways to End of the Line or, Staring at the Sun, but I still like it. Track 11 is a very simple song, and Why Don't You Get a Job, but it's another one that I do like, and it is one of the more well-known tracks on the album. Um, I know it's very much just a take on a very simple sounding song from back in the day, but it just has that signature Offspring snark that I love. Uh, nah, 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 why don't you get a job? Then track 12 is Americana. It's another one I like. I like this track. Uh, Definitely has some more politicized lyrics in it, but they're done well. And overall, I do like the track, and I think it's, uh, in my opinion, it could have been a good closer for the album, but then they decided to end it with Pay the Man. And Pay the Man is really the only track on this album that I'm not really that big on. I still think it's okay because of the audacity of it and because of how well the band executed the ambitious nature of it with the instrumentals and the guitar work and the sitar and all this other stuff. But it's not a track I really go back to a lot, but it is a track that I appreciate. So despite it being a track I'm not super big on, it's still a track that I appreciate enough that it's still good. So there isn't a single track on this album that I think is bad. And that's why I think that this is easily their best album and easily my favorite album of theirs. Um, After Americana, they followed it up with Conspiracy of One in 2000. And this is an album like Ixnay and Ombre that I've really grown to like over the years. In fact, this is an album I really like. The more I listen to this album, the more I like it. And I think this is the last time the Offspring released an album that was genuinely good. And was fairly consistent in terms of quality. There are some tracks on this album that I'm not super big on, but most of the tracks I like. I would say when it comes to this album, my favorite tracks are Want You Bad, which was featured in American Pie 2, Million Miles Away, which I think is one of their best songs in general. Like, I think this song, it just really kicks ass. I think it's a great track. And I also like Denial Revisited. I think that's one of their best ballads. And I like Damn It, I Changed Again. I think that's a good one as well. And All Along is a very short one, but it's fine. But it's not what I would consider to be one of my favorite tracks. Um, and I do remember actually liking Special Delivery. Vultures is okay, but it sounds very similar to one of their other songs they did from one of their earlier albums. Original Prankster is one of their singles from this album, but this one was never something I was super big on. And this was when they really were trying to do another Pretty Fly, and it really didn't fly for me. But Want You Bad is a great track. It's one of their best pop punk songs, and Million Miles Away is one of their best songs ever. And I also really like Denial Revisited. So for the most part, this is an album I do like listening to from beginning to end. But there are some tracks that are better than others. But this is like the first album, though, where I could easily listen to it from beginning to end and for the most part enjoy the majority of it. Because after this album, the band would really start to fall off, in my opinion. They had some success with some tracks from at least the next two albums, but the decline was definitely starting. They were definitely starting to go a little downhill after Conspiracy of One. After Conspiracy of One, their next album was Splinter in 2003. And this is an album that I think, ironically enough, really does match the title of the album. It's a very splintered album when it comes to the quality of the tracks and just the album in general. Uh, the first track is just really just an instrumental that's cool sounding, but it's not really anything that is particularly super memorable or uh, uh, up there with some of their best work. But then it transitions into The Noose, which I think is a terrific song, and it's my favorite song from the album. And I think it's honestly easily one of their best songs uh, ever. Like, I really think it should be in their greatest hits. I think it's that good of a song. Track three is another song I like called Long Way Home. It's short, but it's very sweet, especially when it comes to the opening guitar riff, which I think is honestly one of their most catchy and one of their most memorable, right next to the opening riff for The Kids Aren't Alright. Now, 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 dun 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 dun. Uh, but other than that track, the only other song that I would say I really liked was Lightning Rod. But there are some other songs that I don't mind from this album, like Race Against Myself, Can't Get My Head Around You, Never Gonna Find Me. Spare Me the Details I can deal with, but the single that they did, Hit That, not really that big on. The worst hangover ever is honestly, in my opinion, a contender for their worst song ever. That song sucks. Dahui I'm not big on either, and I don't like When You're in Prison. It's just basically a prison rape joke song. Like, this is an album that is very short, and it's very inconsistent in terms of its quality. You have some really terrific tracks like The Noose and Long Way Home and Lightning Rod, and then you got garbage like The Worst Hangover Ever. So this was definitely an album that really conflicted me. And this was like the first time when I was like, okay, I think this band is really starting to slip. And they followed it up with their next album, Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace, in 2008. And to me, this was their last album that was at least solid. I'm not going to say this is a good album overall because of the fact that it suffers from a similar problem to Splinter. But this was the last album that had tracks on it that I loved, that I thought were among some of the best that the band had done. So this album has like 12 tracks, and the first track is Half Truism, and I think it's I think it's a really great song. I think it's easily one of their better songs from this particular point of their career, because this is when they replaced the drummer, they replaced some other band members. You know, there's a lot of stuff that was starting to let's just say shift when it comes to the band. And this was also when the band was really starting to transition and really trying to be more like some of the other pop punk, new metal bands from the same time period. And the transition, I think, worked to a fault. And it worked with songs like Half Truism and Trust in You, which I also really like. And it has another insanely catchy chorus and hook. And then you got track 3, which is You're Gonna Go Far, Kid, which is one of their biggest hits. And it's a song that became a staple in their concerts for a reason. It's a really good song. And then they follow that up with Hammerhead, which I think is a really great deep cut when it comes to the band. And Then you have A Lot Like Me, track 5, which I still don't mind, but I'm not in love with. Takes Me Nowhere is another one that I kind of just like okay. But then you have Christy, Are You Doing Okay, which I really like. I think that's a really solid, really strong ballad with a lot of emotion. And I think it's got some really powerful lyrics. And it's a really, in my opinion, well put together song. But then after that, it's a whole lot of nothing. You have track 8, which is Nothing Town, which I'm not really into. Track 9 stuff is messed up, which I don't really like. It's just loud and abrasive and in the worst kind of Offspring way. Track 10, Fix You, is a really sappy ballad that doesn't sound like something that the Offspring should be singing. Like, the emotion behind it is, in my opinion, admirable, but it's just not something that Dexter should be singing. And it really does sound like wannabe Coldplay or wannabe My Chemical Romance or wannabe Green Day. There's a lot of that in this album. A lot of wannabe Green Day, My Chemical Romance type stuff with this album. And it really felt like the producers or the band where they were just trying to follow the trend, really. And you heard a little bit of that in Splinter. You definitely started to hear them try to be more of the times and try to adjust their style to fit what's popular. But in the process, you lose a lot of the identity of what the band is. And this is the album where it's really starting to set in with songs like Fix You. And then you have like tracks 11 and 12, which are easily some of the most throwaway, forgettable tracks the band has ever done. And Let's Hear It for Rock Bottom and Rise and Fall. So this is a bit of a disappointing album because it starts off so strong. I mean, the first 4 tracks are fantastic. They're right up there with some of their best songs from some of their best albums to me. But then it starts to slip a little bit, but then it picks up again with Christy, Are You Doing Okay? But then it just completely falls off and falls into the shitter. And the band never really recovered after that, to be perfectly honest. Because the next album is Days Go By in 2012. And it's an album that I don't think is necessarily as terrible as some people make it out to be. But it's still very generic. This is an album that really emphasizes the Offspring really trying to be a bunch of posers. The Offspring trying to just be another new metal band. In particular, trying to be Rise Against. And I love Rise Against. But the Offspring is not Rise Against. And, man, it was really evident that they were running out of steam, running out of ideas, because they did a cover of Dirty Magic on this album. And a lot of these songs just didn't work that well. OC Guns is just weird and doesn't work. Cruising California is more of the same. I don't mind Days Go By, or The Future Is Now, or Turning Into You, or Dividing by Zero. Like, I don't mind these songs, but they're not what I would consider to be Offspring songs that I would put on a playlist of their best work. They're not songs that I would say that I really like. They're just songs that I like okay. So they're up there with a lot of the just kind of average, all right tracks from some of their other albums. And that's really how the majority of this album is. And this was also really at the point when Dexter's voice is really starting to falter. You could hear that in Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace with some songs, but it was still an album, though, that features some really strong vocals by him, and in all honesty, some of his strongest. But as he got older and we went into 2012, whatever strength he had left in that voice was definitely not there anymore. And what was happening is his voice was starting to sound pretty much exactly what it was starting to sound like in, Stuff Is Messed Up, or Let's Hear It for Rock Bottom, or Rise and Fall. And the sound of his voice became very grating to me. It became very nasally. And in all honesty, he started to sound like Weird Al Yankovic. And it became a sound that I just could not get out of my head. And it really continued with the Let the Bad Times Roll, which was their next album in 2021 after the 2012 album um, Days Go By. Days Go By wasn't great, but I will take that any day of the week over this album. This album is a mess. This has a lot of demos that are just thrown in there and honestly sound like they're barely finished. A track that was already out that they did called Coming For You, which was a song that they had for Elimination Chamber for a WWE pay-per-view. Like the song had already been out for years, and then they just threw this song on there because they didn't have enough songs for an entire album. And this is also when the Offspring got really political, but in a way that wasn't subtle and wasn't clever and wasn't very well done. It sounded very boomer ish. And it's very evident in This Is Not Utopia or Let the Bad Times Roll. And this is easily one of their worst albums. I could totally see somebody saying this is their worst, but this has some songs on it that I like more than anything on their debut album. So that's why I personally would have it higher. For instance, I actually like Army of One. I think the chorus is really good, and I actually like the overall song. It's just mixed so poorly that it's hard for me to listen to it over and over again. But there's enough elements of the song that I do like that I would say that I like it. Let the Bad Times Roll also has a pretty catchy chorus in it as well. Coming For You, it's clearly a WWE wrestling song, but it scratches that particular itch well. Uh, Hassan Chop, I like. I think it's the best song on the album, and it sounds the closest the band has gotten, in my opinion, to what the band was known for. In Smash and Americana and Ixnay on the Hombre and Conspiracy of One. The Opioid Diaries is also not too bad. The cover of Gone Away is another just atrocious track, and just oh my god, it is easily one of the worst things they've ever done. They butchered that song so badly. And speaking of butchering, Bob Rock, the producer, he just dropped the ball so hard in this album. This album sounds like shit. The mixing is honestly the worst that I've ever heard from this band. Very often it sounds like Dexter is just singing over really low quality MP3 files. And in Breaking These Bones and Army of One, like the drums in particular are so badly mixed that they sound like ass. They really do. Especially the cymbals. Like they are ear-gratingly, ear-bleedingly bad. So, yeah, this is definitely not, in my opinion, a very good album. And they followed it up with Supercharged in 2024, which is their most recent album. And it's better than Let the Bad Times Roll, but it's not hard to be better than that crap. It's still not what I would consider to be a great album, but it's the best that I've honestly heard the band sound since Rise and Fall, Rage and Grace. I will admit that, but none of the songs, even some of the better songs, are on the same level as the best songs from that album. I'm not really big on looking out for number one, but I do like Light It Up. Light It Up literally sounds like it's a song about the Rocketeer. Like a song about a guy with a rocket pack on his back. And I'm like, did they watch The Rocketeer? And I'm like, oh man, let's write a song about the Rocketeer. That'll be fun. It literally sounds like a song about the Rocketeer. The Fall Guy, I liked. Truth and Fiction, I also liked. I didn't mind You Can't Get There From Here as well. But there's a lot of tracks in this album that just are a little off, or I'm not really big on, or just very forgettable. Like Okay, But This Is the Last Time, and Make It All Right, and Come to Brazil, and Get Some. And this is also an album where it's very much zombie Offspring. It is. This is, at this point in time, it's zombie Offspring because there's only two remaining members from the original band, and Noodles and Dexter, and everybody else is new guys, and it's just not the same. And uh, Dexter's vocals definitely are pretty ragged at this point. He can't really sing in the same register in the same range anymore, and you could definitely hear some AI or some kind of auto tuning to try to make up for it, and it doesn't sound the best. So Supercharged, I would say if you're a super fan of the Offspring, it's definitely worth listening to because it's not straight up garbage. You know, it's not embarrassing like Let the Bad Times Roll. That was embarrassing because of the long wait for the album and then what they provided, which was lazy and uninspired for the most part and just felt like a bunch of demos that were just slapped together on an album. But this doesn't have that feeling. Uh, and it does have some good energy to it, but you could definitely tell that their best days are behind them. When it comes to the band creatively as well as just overall. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the Offspring. I know this is a long video, but I'm talking about their entire discography. So I knew that this was going to be a long one. And I hope you enjoyed it. And until the next time or the next video, I'll see you later. See ya.